from our neighborhood public school, which is where Theodore are going to be starting 2nd and 4th grade in a matter of a week from right now. So a week from right now will be the first day of school, and we'll have a chance to walk our kids to really an excellent neighborhood public school, and we feel like we're really, really blessed to be in this situation. But I wanted to say a word about the economics of what enables us to live in this situation. And so I want to compare some just financial information from the year 2015, which is the last year that we have complete data for. That year, our family was pretty lucky. And just so for information, if you guys want to block that camera, that's all right. But if you want to block that camera, don't. So that's our camera, and that's Pritzker's camera. In the year 2015, we were fortunate. We made pretty close to $70,000, which enabled us to live in that home and pay our mortgage. And here's how our tax burden worked out. This bottom slice is what we paid in property taxes, and this orange slice is what we paid in state income taxes. And as a result of that, we wound up paying 11% of our income in taxes. That was the burden that was imposed on a middle-class family like us. I wanted to stack it next to the situation that the Rauner family experienced in that year, but we weren't able to construct a ceiling high enough for that. And so you just see the bottom of the Rauner graph, and the next chart will show you the two side to side. Here's the situation that the Rauner family was in that year. They were actually even more fortunate than we were. They were able to make $188 million that year. And this very small slice shows the percentage they were paying in property taxes, and this is their income tax. If you add it all up, they paid 4% of their income in property and state income tax. So we felt pretty blessed, we felt pretty fortunate. But to make it all happen, we're paying 11% in taxes, and the Rauners are paying 4% in taxes. And listen, don't cry for us, we feel unbelievably blessed. But the problem is the situation that we are experiencing is a situation that is being replicated across the state for middle-class families, many of whom don't have the privilege and opportunity that we do, and many of whom are going through a much more difficult situation. So to personalize it a little bit, here's the situation that we find across the state. As you travel from the left-hand side to the right-hand side of the screen, you're moving from the poorest Illinois residents to the richest Illinois residents. Poorest 20% is the left-hand bar, then the next 20%, then the middle 20%, then the following 20%. Now, the next 15%, so kind of the bottom 3/4 of the top fifth, if you want to fractionalize it. Then that next 4%, so we're like, now we're in the top 5%, and here's the top 1%. Now, what do we find in this chart? What do we see in this situation? In Illinois, the more you make, the less you pay. In Illinois, the more you make, the less you pay. And so we have a tax system that, in a consistent and systematic way, overburdens people at the bottom, overburdens people in the middle, and allows people at the top to get away without paying their share. And if you think about how our economy has evolved over the course of the last couple generations, what you're finding is that more and more of the money is here. Every time the economy grows, the bulk of that's going here. And yet, our taxes are focused here. And then people ask, how come the state government's broke? Well, our taxes aren't focused on where the money is, they're focused on somewhere else. And so you might ask why that would happen. Well, you might not ask why that would happen if you're as cynical as some people are in politics these days, but you might ask why that would happen. And if you ask why that would happen, the answer is because of who runs our system. The answer is because of who pays for our elections. The answer is because who our elected officials feel like they're obligated to listen to and respond to and to answer to. When you have a tax code written by and on behalf of millionaires and billionaires, it's going to wind up with this. Now, what I would tell you is it doesn't have to be that way. What I would tell you is that Illinois is not like other states. What I would tell you is that this is a more progressive, steep downward, benefiting the rich slope than any state besides maybe 3 or 4 others. What I would tell you is that because of the way this works, we fund our schools in a more inequitable way than any other state. And what I would tell you is that the changes needed to be enacted to fix this and create a chart that's fair and just and enables us to fund a government are changes that many other states didn't even need to make because they didn't trap themselves in the inequitable box that we trapped ourselves in. Let me tell you a word about why we trapped ourselves in that box, besides the ugly fact of who's paying for the elections. Iowa and Wisconsin have had income taxes for around 100 years, one of them since the 19-teens, one of them since the 1930s. And if you ask yourself about how equitable or inequitable our economy was then, what you find is that there was unbelievable inequality. Incredible amount of the wealth at the top, incredible amount of the income at the top, very little everywhere else. And so when those states enacted their income taxes, they said, Jesus, this doesn't seem good. We're going to enact a fair tax that doesn't ask too much of people at the bottom because they're already not making much, and asks a lot of people at the top who are doing far, far better. The good news in American economic history is that for decades after that, things got more and more equal. Until the late 1960s, when things were as equal as they have been in American economic history, and that's by coincidence when Illinois created its income tax. So when we created our income tax in the late 1960s, that was in a moment of comparative economic inequality, and so people were like, okay, it's fair enough if everyone pays the same rate because everyone has been doing reasonably well. And then in 1970, when a new constitution got written, that got frozen in there. So the new constitution that was written in 1970 said, hey, listen, people are doing comparatively equally, and so it's not so bad if we have a flat tax, so we're going to force that on us in perpetuity. And then, since then, more and more and more money has gone back to the top and less to the rest of us. And so what we've done is we allowed the very wealthy to lock a system in place in 1970 that since then has not kept pace with the modern economy, but we haven't been able to change it. And so the question facing us right now is, how do you fix that? And there's never going to be any hope whatsoever of fixing this if we allow the people who benefit from it to continue to be the ones to make the decisions. What's at stake in this election is a question of whether we're prepared to take power back, whether we're able to take power back for the rest of us, not just so we can fix a graph, but so we can create economic justice in Illinois, so that we can create a system of basic fairness in the state of Illinois, so that we can create a system where the people who are asked to pay are able to pay what they're asked to pay, and that money is then used to fund a school system that works everywhere, not just in a few places. And to have this conversation in Waukegan this afternoon is particularly poignant because this is a part of the state that has been viciously harmed by this system. This is a part of the state that has been viciously suffering under a system that asks too much of the citizens of Waukegan while getting not enough back, while failing also adequately to fund the schools. Getting that right is what's at stake in this election. It's what's at stake in this primary especially because what we've seen over the course of many, many years, and I would even say decades now, is a Democratic Party that pays lip service to a lot of these changes but hasn't really been willing to throw its weight into it. And that's why we're still here. This isn't new. Bruce Rauner being a catastrophic nightmare is new. Illinois government burning with a 2-year budget impasse is new. Social service providers shutting down by the day and schools not knowing whether they're going to be able to open is new. But this isn't. And this wasn't fixed when Democrats were in power or when Republicans were in power because of who paid for the campaigns, because of who they listened to. This is the moment to transform that, and that's why I'm running for governor. So I have gone on way more than long enough. I would like to just turn this into a very informal conversation and see if we can talk, A, about some of our shared thoughts of what the state can do differently and better going forward, but B, our shared thoughts about what this community in particular needs and how it can work to support this community so that our state government finally stops acting as though it's all right to leave certain parts of Illinois behind. So with that, thank you, and it's your turn. Oh, great.
I have a question.
Please.
So, Maria.
Yep.
Two things. Why has there not been a constitutional amendment proposed? One for the taxes in perpetuity.
Yep.
And two for the pension plans, because there's so many double dippings going on with pensions that in itself is also creating a tax deficit.
Yeah. The two questions have really different answers, so I'll just answer them separately. On the question of the taxes that's been proposed, I'm a sponsor of one, and I've been co-sponsors of them many times over the course of the years. And actually the Senate has enough votes to pass it now. But the House doesn't quite And we've fought these fights in the past, and what we never had was real inside leadership pushing for it. So we had a lot of wonderful activists. We had the labor movement. We had outside organizers. We had movement building. And that got us almost to the finish line, but not quite. And we never had a governor who was pushing for it. We never had a speaker who was pushing for it. We just sort of let the politicians kind of say it's not our problem. Hopefully the activists will get the job done. We're never going to get the job done that way for a very specific reason, which is there's a lot of financial interest on the other side. And so when I'm governor, you're not going to have a governor who says, yeah, it's a good idea, hopefully somebody else gets the job done. You're going to have a governor who's going to say, we're doing this now. When I'm elected, I'm not going to wait till I'm inaugurated the day after the election. I'm going to sit down with the legislative leaders. Maybe that's Madigan and Cullerton and Brady and Durkin. By then maybe it's 4 other people, who knows? That'd be interesting. But real interesting. But we're going to sit down and have a conversation. And here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, listen, I'm now going to be the governor, but I'm not the emperor. I'm not going to be able to dictate everything. I don't have any illusions about that, nor do I want to dictate everything. I'm here to be collaborative. I'm here to make concessions. I'm here to listen. I'm here to cooperate. But here's something we have to fix. And so I want you all to tell me what we can do that meets some of your priorities that also makes sure we find those votes to get this constitutional amendment on the ballot. Knowing, again, that we're not 50 votes short or 40 votes short or 30 votes short, we're a handful of votes short. And if we all work together based upon genuine conviction and commitment from a governor who says, not just is this kind of a good thing to do, but this is necessary if we want to fix Illinois, if that happens, we'll get it done. Now, around the pensions, the truth of the matter is that you actually nailed a lot of the problem around the pension costs. So there's a lot to say about how can we have so much pension debt. There's a lot of history to go into it. It's a really important topic. I'm happy to go into it. But when it comes to what about the pension benefits has caused that, it's really not your typical teacher. Not the person who answers the phone at the Waukegan City Hall. It is few people who are able to get special deals. Many of whom are legislators, by the way, right? And that's those examples of double dipping that are so obscene and that really give the middle-class teacher who just went to school every day for 35 years and did their job and gets a very reasonable pension a bad name. And so the good news is that a lot of those changes just can be made, and many of those changes have been made, and there's more progress that can be made to fix these extreme aspects of pension abuses that have been allowed. And that's not really what a constitutional change would be about. There are people who push for constitutional change to make the pensions more flexible, and the truth of the matter is that you need some protection, and I think if you were to make that change, it wouldn't actually have the impact that a lot of people think it would, because the protection is granted at the moment of employ, and so it's still not going to be constitutional or frankly reasonable to kind of retroactively change that. What you do have to do, though, if you want the system to work properly, is you have to make sure you make the payments. Because you're right that there's been abuses, and they're ugly and wrong, and in some cases immoral. And there have been some changes, and there ought to be more changes. But there's also just the great mass of people who have reasonable pensions, that you would want them to have that kind of pension, and that those pensions are affordable, but we've chosen for decades not to make the payments. And if you choose not to make the payments, no pension's affordable. If you say every year, I know I ought to make this payment, but I'd rather spend the money somewhere else, or there's a bit of a recession, so our revenue is lower than we expected, and so it's more difficult. Or, I want to expand programmatic spending somewhere else, but I don't have the guts to bring in the new revenue. All of which was said many times over the course of our entire lifetimes and longer. If you do that, the pension system's never going to be properly funded, and you're always going to have this problem. And so what we need to do is emulate the pension systems that work. And so we're sitting here with a former mayor of Buffalo Grove, Elliot Hartstein, who can tell you that when they were asked to make their employer payment into the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, well, they weren't asked, they were told. And if they said no, they got penalized, and the penalty was big enough they didn't bother saying no in the first place. And so sure enough, year in and year out, all those payments are made into the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, and that fund's in good shape. And it's not the only one in the country, it's unfortunately the only one that's really like that in the state. But in the country, you have things like the Texas teachers' pension system, where the Constitution says the payment's got to get made every year, and so the payment gets made and they're in fine shape. And so, yes, these abuses are indefensible, and I'm not here to defend them. But let's not confuse the abuses with the ordinary reasonable benefits of the middle class people who are the primary participants in the systems. And in order to protect those, we've got to make the payments. In order to make the payments, we've got to force ourselves to make the payments because we've shown over the course of generations we don't have the discipline. And, dead horse alert, we've got to make it affordable by having a tax system that enables us to pay. This tax system is not going to support the payments needed to be made into the pension funds.
Right, and I'm aware of it,
yeah.
because I know there are always, judges are protected, judges' pensions are protected because they pay into it. And
Yeah.
I sat on the board, that's why.
Which board?
The Illinois Pension Fund. I was
Oh.
appointed.
Got it.
And I resigned 2 years later because we had no power. So.
Yeah, that's almost literally true, right?
Right, we had no power, but we were liable. So
That's right.
that doesn't seem to make
Yeah.
sense. And in the Constitution, it does say that it's required, payments must be made to meet, no?
Here's what the Constitution says. Article 13, Section 5 of the Constitution says membership in a pension system, basically, is a contractual relationship, the benefits of which shall not be diminished or impaired. So what does that mean? It means if you are in the system, if you're in the pension system, let's say you're a teacher, you have the contractual protection that your benefit, the pension you're supposed to get, cannot be cut. Right? If it's a contract, it can't be changed unilaterally. And so what the protection says is the teacher cannot have their pension cut unless they agree to it. What it doesn't say is that the state has to make the payment to make that possible. So it says, you're 40 years old, when you retire at 63, let's say, you're entitled to this benefit, that grows at 3% throughout the rest of your life. You're entitled to that ironclad no matter what. Oh, by the way,